Ron Rose Productions, also known as Rose Milagro, will celebrate their 40th year in business in another month or so. They've been on the forefront of video and audio productions in the state of Michigan, if not the country, for a long, long time. Their clients have included auto companies, hospitals, major lenders, insurance companies, and so forth, many more. Here's some examples of some of their work. We're very pleased to have an old friend and an esteemed member of the broadcasting community with me today, Ron Rose. Thank you so much for being on our program.
Thank you, John.
It's been too long since I've seen you, my friend.
It's the only time anybody's ever referred to a disc jockey as esteemed, but...
Well, you know, the funny part of it is, whenever I run into other people in the business, and I bring up your name, they'll always say the same thing. They'll say, he is one of the nicest people that I know in this business. And indeed, from my memories, will agree with that.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
You're not only involved with the business aspect of audio and visual productions, but you do some charitable work, too, with your business, don't you? You Special Olympics, I believe?
Yeah, we do it. You know, when you're dealing with advertising agencies, it always comes up. And, of course, one of the best things that ever happened to us was years ago when I was starting out and I was in my home. The studio started in Ty Cobb's old house in Southfield. It was built in 1928. And we were trying to get some Campbell Ewald business. And the people there said, Mr. Adams, Tom Adams, who was the chairman, has a favorite charity, and that's Boys and Girls Clubs. And if you would maybe donate some studio time for the Boys and Girls Clubs, it might go a long way. And I said, sure, you know. So I did, and we did a lot of commercials for the Boys and Girls Clubs. And Tom then invited me to a dinner at a Boys and Girls Club somewhere in Detroit on Schoolcraft, I think, to pass out awards to the kids and stuff like that. And I sat next to him during the award ceremony, and had dinner with the kids, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And we did a lot of work with Campbell Ewald over the years, and that sort of helped us get other agencies. So yes, long way of answering, yeah, we do a lot of charity work.
Now, just to bring people up to date on the evolution of your business, I know there's a lot more detail to go into, but as far as location goes, you started out where you just mentioned, and then you went to Southfield from there?
Yeah, well, the Ty Cobb house was Southfield.
Okay.
But it was about 2 miles from, I outgrew it. We had like an office attached to the garage, and that was the studio. And it was getting busier, and we knew we were going to have to move because the Detroit studios were having trouble. People were getting mugged in Detroit and stuff like that. This is back in the early 70s. Early 70s, yeah. And so they said, if you don't, get to a different location, a bigger location, somebody's going to steal your thunder. So.
And there's an interesting piece on your website about Ty Cobb's old house and how you made the echo chamber.
Yeah, he had a swimming pool in the basement. It was an addition on the side of the house, and it was a 28 by 38 foot concrete and glazed tile room with a concrete ceiling and walls and floor, and it had never been filled. And I put a speaker at one end and a mic at the other, and you'd send a signal into it and pick it up on the mic, and the reverb was unbelievable. By the way, that's how Capitol Records did it.
Well, didn't Les Paul do that initially when he,
Probably.
yeah, some of the early electric guitar recordings?
I wouldn't doubt it. And Capitol Records, you know, the circular building in L.A., that's not where they record. They record in a side building. But their echo chambers are concrete rooms under their parking lot. Speaker at one end and a microphone at the other.
So,
And that's where they get that natural reverb.
so what convinced you to come to this location, which, by the way, was originally a building where was it Model Ts were sold?
Yeah, 1917. This building will be 100 years old next year.
Wow.
It was originally a Model T dealership. Then in 38 or 39, it was a Plymouth Dodge dealership. It's been a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we always liked the building, but it was a kind of a wreck. And then this lady, Asanta Zawaida, who's in the pharmaceutical business, bought this property and the property next door and fixed the building up. And we begged her for months to rent space. And she didn't want a recording studio in there. And we had to convince her we weren't going to be, you know, smoking illegal substances and playing music all hours of the night, that we did commercials. And so finally we convinced her to come over, I think it was a real estate agent, to come over to our studios in Southfield and see them. And she was there about 5 minutes and went, oh, wow, this is pretty neat. And,
Wow.
and the rest is history, you know.
Yeah. I'd like to talk more about how you and the business got started. Now, let's talk about you first. Were you born in Allen Park?
I was born in Delray, Detroit. The Delray section of Detroit, which is, I don't know, it's by the I-75 bridge where the Rouge River is.
Okay.
Del-
Have you ever had a chance to trace your ancestors back to figure out what your lineage was?
Well, my dad's was all Hungarian on his side, and his parents came from the old country.
Okay, so his parents. So your dad was the first one
Yeah,
to come here.
he and his brothers and sisters, yeah.
Okay. Now, I know you lived in Allen Park. When did you move there?
I was 2. I remember it well.
So you went to school in Allen Park. You remember it well. Okay, yes, tell me.
Yeah, I went to let's see, kindergarten, first and second grade. I went to Arno, A-R-N-O, which was just in the neighborhood, and it was a grade school. And then I went to St. Francis Cabrini in Allen Park, and I graduated from there in 8th grade back then. And then I went to UAD High in Detroit for 2 years, and they threw me out. And I went to St. Francis Xavier in E-course, graduated from there, and then went back to the University of Detroit. It only took them 3 semesters to throw me out.
What did your dad do for a living?
He was a butcher. Meat
Really?
Yeah, he was a meat cutter.
Well, did he work for one of the big markets?
Yeah,
or-
well, originally he worked for Kroger's, but then he worked for a little chain called Stop and Shop. They're in Plymouth and Brighton and Chelsea and Ann Arbor.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. Yeah, I think that was it.
What is one of your favorite memories about living in Allen Park?
Oh, boy. There was a guy named Dave Kelly who is still alive, owns a couple of radio stations in Nebraska, I think. Well, I see him every year or every other year or so. And he lived 2 blocks from me, and he had a fake radio station in his basement. He played radio. And my brother was in radio. And so I got together with David, and we used to do record hops. I spun the records, and he was the DJ. I got paid in pizza. After we got done with the show, he'd take me out to Original Joe's Pizza, and we'd have pizza and Coke.
Tell me more about your brother. You say your brother was in radio.
Yeah, he was at WKAR in Lansing at Michigan State University's radio station. Then he went to WPON in Pontiac. He developed asthma, so he moved out west to Arizona and ended up at KTAR in Phoenix. And then he went into, he was always loved movies. He became a movie critic on radio, television, and newspapers in Phoenix.
Wow. I want to talk more about that in just a minute. We've got to take a break, but we'll be right back with Ron Rose. Back with Ron Rose. We were talking about the beginning of your so-called radio career, your disc jockey stage, and how your brother, I guess, was an inspiration for you?
Yes, and Dave Kelly, the guy down the street. I was, kind of bouncing around trying to figure out what to do, and when I met Dave, he said, "You've got a really good natural ability," and that's how it started. And then he ended up putting on a little FM radio station in 1961, I think it was, in Lincoln Park, WLIN, and I was on the air there.
That was the first place I heard you.
Yeah,
I was in high school at the time.
So was I.
Were you?
Yeah. I'd get out of school and run over to the radio station.
What was it you liked about radio?
I guess the idea of being in front of all of those girls, at the time. Back then, FM set saturation in Detroit was about, 4%, 5%. I mean, our ratings were below police calls. I mean, nobody could. There weren't FM radios in cars back then.
Well, no, back then, I mean, FM was for like elevator music.
Well,
right?
that's what they were trying to do because they were high fidelity. AM was not hi-fi. That was their only claim to fame.
Yeah, but you were part of the revolution of FM from the elevator stage to the more popular stage.
Well, yeah, to the programming stage until it went belly up. I mean, I don't think I ever did see a paycheck in the whole time I was there.
Is that right?
Oh, a few. I think I was getting paid $1.25 an hour for the hours I was on the air.
So did you say you were working out of his house?
No.
Or did
We
you-
started playing radio in his house.
Right.
He actually got a radio station on the air in Lincoln Park.
In Lincoln.
The tower was downtown on top of the David Stott building.
I see.
And so anyway, I can't even remember where I was going with this thing.
Well, was WCAR the next step for you?
Yeah. Actually, I left WLIN and went to Richmond Brothers Clothes at Grand River and Oakland selling clothes because I needed money to put gas in my car to go to school. And it was boring. And I wanted to get back into radio, so I took audition tapes around. And I got a job at CAR as the grunt. I was putting spots on carts and cartridges that we used to use back then. And, handing copy to the newsmen and running teletype stuff back and forth. And they put me on weekends when the weekend guy quit because they were opening his mail, Dennis Darnell. His real name was Dennis Israel. And they needed somebody to go on the air that night, so they threw me on, and it didn't go too bad, so I ended up on weekends there. And
All right, I have to ask you this. Tell me about getting thrown out of high school.
I got thrown, well, I basically was at U.D. in Detroit at 7 Mile in Wyoming, and I lived in Allen Park, and I traveled about 2 hours to school on buses in the morning and 2 hours home.
Now, was this because your folks wanted you to go there?
Yeah, it was a good school.
Okay.
So basically, I came home to do my homework. I got home at 5:30 or 6, had dinner, went downstairs to do my homework, and fell asleep. So my grades weren't what you'd call exceptional, and they certainly weren't up to UAD standards. So when I ended up at Xavier, my grades were great because I lived 20 minutes from there, 15 minutes from there.
It was a lot closer.
Well, a lot closer, so I could actually study and stay awake. Of course, I was working in radio then, so during records I'd do my geometry problems or whatever.
Okay, back to CAR. You were the weekend guy.
Yeah. Weekend. Let's see. Saturday night, 7 to midnight. Sunday afternoon, 2 to 7. And
production during
all
the
night,
week.
Monday night or something like that. Yeah, and then production during the week, right.
And then eventually, you got the evening shift, didn't you?
Yeah, after... Geez, John, you're making me think of a lot of stuff here. I think it was a couple of years I got 7 to midnight. And that was really tough. I think that's when I got thrown out of UAD. Maybe it was a year and a half, I don't remember.
But I can remember you doing remotes from
The Michigan State Fair.
Michigan State Fair.
Yeah, I remember it too.
Yeah.
That was interesting. We used to get off the air at midnight, and Perry Krause, who was my engineer, my record spinner, who now owns a candy company or something, and his brother was a writer on Barney Miller. No, another long story. He and I used to take one of those old CAR replicas. They were replicas of 1903 Oldsmobiles, and we'd get off and we'd drive around the fairgrounds and talk to the people at the fair that worked the fair. Now, those were some interesting people.
I can imagine.
Carnies, you know.
Yeah. What was going through your mind about the business when you were doing this?
I just wanted to get a better shift. I wanted to get off of all nights and then 7 to midnight, and then I wanted to move into daytime radio, and I did. And then the chance came along to do commercials, but the boss of the radio station wouldn't allow us to do it, so I was turning down these opportunities. And
So you were getting offers to do commercials back then?
Yeah, I got a few for recording sessions and stuff, and they were paying a lot more than what I was getting on a weekly basis at CAR.
Yeah.
But the boss wouldn't let us do them.
And of course, the boss was H.Y. Levinson.
Mr.
But you know, he had his own idea of how to run his company, and he was successful at what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Even though some of the folks who worked for him would rather he'd have done it a little bit differently.
A lot differently, yeah. I never had a problem with Mr. Levinson, but I think that's because he paid me nothing and I had good numbers, and I always was, yes, Mr. Levinson, no, Mr. Levinson.
And
So
you were on the radio.
and I was on the radio, so exactly.
In a major
right.
market.
Yeah.
The 5th largest market in the country
At the time, yeah.
Yeah.
And there were really only 8 major radio stations in Detroit at the time, 5 majors. And the FMs were just also rans.
And there was no Sirius.
No Sirius or XM radio, nothing like that.
Yeah.
No podcasts, none of the above.
So, when did you leave WCAR?
1969.
Okay.
I started there, I think, in 65 and 64, 65, and left in 69. I went into a thing called Holiday Magic, which was one of these pyramid franchise things like Shackley or Amway or
What did they sell?
cosmetics. But
And it wasn't just you. There was another fellow from the station who went in with you on that, as I recall.
Jack Sanders,
Yeah.
my boss, and then Poop Deck Paul from Channel 9 and Jerry Booth from Boothland on Channel 9. They were in it also. And it was good for a little while, and then the Attorney General decided he wanted to run for governor, so he made some kind of a big thing about a pyramid scheme, which we all put our money in like everybody else did, and you try to get other people into the distributorships, and anyway, there's all kinds of them out there now, but
Well, yeah.
the big thing with them now is, with computers, they get the sales tax is paid by the corporation through computers. Where back then there weren't computers and the individual distributors had to pay the sales tax, and they weren't, so they went after them. But they don't go after them now when they get that big chunk of money from the corporations because of the computers.
So where were you with your life when all that fell apart? Were you married?
I had just gotten married.
Okay. Any kids?
Yeah, 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. I twin boys.
At that time? Right then?
We had
After Holiday Magic?
after Holiday Magic, I got back into radio. After I got back into radio at
Where did you work then?
W4.
Ah, okay. You'd take another break, Ron.
Okay.
So, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Don't miss what's going on in your local government meetings. Watch Elgin Nichols and Dave Kinney on Minutes by Minute. Airs Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., 11:30 a.m., and 11:30 p.m., where they add a touch of humor to local politics.
Back with Ron Rose. Okay, so after the Holiday Magic, you were with W4?
W4. I was doing some kind of a sales job with one of these hiring companies where we would get salesman jobs doing sales at other companies.
And how old were you at that point?
24.
Yeah. When did the commercial production business first start going through your mind?
Oh, okay. I was at W4 for, and I guess maybe about a year, and it was not fun. It was just not a fun job. It was just a lot of, I had a bleeding duodenal ulcer. I was program director. It was killing me.
Were you really on the air at W4?
Yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just before Howard Stern. Stern hadn't come there yet. So I got out of that and went to Specs Howard. Specs had just bought the school from Lee Allen, so I was working at the Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts as director of admissions or something.
I was going to say, I didn't think you were a student there.
No. I was a teacher and bringing in students and, signing them up for the school. And then, I don't know, that got old, and I got an offer to go to WHFI in Birmingham, which is, I don't even know what it is now.
That's where I was after CAR. You asked me where? It was WHFI.
HFI,
That just
okay.
brought that to mind. Yeah.
You must have been there with,
Gary Puris and, gosh, it's been a long time.
I know, I don't know why I can't think of the guy's name.
Well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You were at WHFI.
And I was program director. And then the boss there wanted to automate the station, and so I became sales manager, and we put him in the black for the first time in their 15-year history, and he sold it. And I went home that night roaring drunk and said to my wife at the time, I've only had 2 wives. The second one is, we've been married now for 37 years. I said to her, my first wife, I'm never going to work for anybody as long as I live again. I can't do this anymore. And so I started doing commercials while I was finishing out the time at the radio station. And the chairman of that radio group called me up and asked me to come downtown and meet him for breakfast to talk to him about a job with the new outfit. And I said, okay. And as luck would have it, I got a call from Joe Baccarella, who was my boss at CAR, but he had left and gone to XYZ. And he asked me to come and meet him about 10 o'clock in the morning that same day about a position. I said, okay. So I went and met Peter Bordas, the chairman of Greater Media, wonderful guy, really a nice man. And he offered me general managership of WHFI. And I said, may I think about it? And he said, of course. And I got in my car and I drove out to Broadcast House and saw Baccarella, and he offered me weekends in fill-in at WXYZ.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, but it was, I'd have a chance to do commercials, and I had a base to operate with, so I said, yeah, I'll take it. And then I called Mr. Bordas and said, I've taken a job as a weekend disc jockey at WXYZ, and I know he thought I was absolutely out of my mind. He said, I thought you were smarter than that. And I said, there's a reason, sir. I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I can't do this anymore. I want to start doing commercials, and this will give me the chance. And that's where it started. Lafayette Radio was one of my clients at the time. I was doing commercials for them on a weekly basis, and I would trade them out for equipment. And I started getting equipment for my studio. And then when we first had a daughter, and then the second child was to be born, and back then, 42 years ago, they didn't know about ultrasounds, and my wife at the time was getting very large, and they finally decided to x-ray her, and they found out it was twins.
Wow.
And 3 days later, we had twin boys, and that necessitated a move to Southfield, bigger quarters. And I thought, well, I can put a studio in this house. It had a dental office attached to it, Ty Cobb's house. Mm-hmm. And a practicing retired dentist was doing work out of there, selling the house, so that's where I started the studio. Mm-hmm. That's it.
That's it. You've seen a lot of changes in this business over the years.
Oh my God,
you?
yes.
I mean, everything is digitalized, more computerization, the whole business of voice work has changed.
That's almost gone now. I mean,
Give us an idea of the metamorphosis of this business during the time that you've been in it.
Well, there was, in Detroit, there was Artie Field's United Sound, which is in the papers right now, and Special Recordings. And that was pretty much it. And then there was me out in Southfield. And there were studios in New York, LA, Chicago, the major production areas. I started doing a lot of voiceover work. And as the Detroit business got bigger, I got more work, and I got to the point where I was getting overexposed in Detroit, and the studios were doing really well, and I thought, well, I'd like to see whether or not I could do it in New York. And I got an agent in New York, and then I got a lot of major accounts, Ivory Soap and Kodak Film and some Post serials and Geritol and Avon and some motion picture work and commercials for motion pictures and People Magazine. I had a lot of nice accounts. And then the studio was getting bigger, and we thought, well, maybe we should open in another location. And we opened in Tampa. And as luck would have it, I was losing more in Tampa than I was making in New York. So I moved down to Tampa. And in the process of all of that, the Screen Actors Guild and American Federation of Television Radio Artists had a big strike, and they stopped doing commercials for about 6 months. And so everything was being done non-union at that point. And when the strike was over, if you'll remember back then, you never saw actors do commercials. They would do them in foreign countries, but it was beneath them to do it in this country. And when the strike was over, the newspapers printed an article about how much money the voiceover people gave up by sticking to the strike. And when the actors in Hollywood looked at it and they went, oh my God, that's a lot of money. And the next thing you knew, a lot of major Hollywood players were doing commercials. And the guys that were voiceover men and women, voice actors, we started getting pushed aside by the Hollywood people.
The internet and electronics have changed a lot
Killed
with
it.
this business.
Sure.
haven't it? I mean, now if a person wants to do voice work, there are websites they can go to
Oh, and it's all done-
stage
it's-
their auditions and stuff.
Yeah,
like
and it's non-union, and you know who can do it the cheapest and the fastest, and everybody's got a microphone and some kind of a little internet box in their home, and so they record an inexpensive commercial for $60 or $80, and it goes on the air.
Yeah, and not only that, but even with visual stuff. I've got grandkids who have programs on their computers who are putting stuff together. It's unbelievable.
It really is. You know, our thing in our business is to stay a jump ahead of it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we have 3D graphics and regular graphics. Our creative director here, Glenn Parsons, spent 10 years in New York doing Sesame Street. He was one of the design guys and creative guys on Sesame Street. And now he's here as our creative director, and he's head of our graphics department.
Now, I believe as far as your business goes, your son is...
My one twin son is the president of this company now. I'm the chairman. Once again, been booted out.
But you're smiling about this instance, right?
My other son, his twin, is in real estate, and my daughter's a doctor, a psychologist in San Francisco.
In the last 40 years, you've probably gotten to know almost every famous broadcaster in our state, if not our country. And you've gotten to grow your business as much as you have. Do you ever pinch yourself and blink your eyes and wonder if this has really happened to you?
Yeah. What I pinch myself about is I was so busy building a business and a career that now I look back and I go, when did all this happen? I mean, it seems like it was yesterday. As I'm talking to you right now, it seems like I started doing this a few minutes ago. I mean, my life. The older you get, the faster it goes by. That's my emotion now.
If you had to do it over again, would
Yes.
you make any changes?
No. No, I don't think so. No, I'm very happy with the way it went.
Well, I'm happy that you came on our program.
Well, thank you,
Thank you
John. It
very
was
much.
nice seeing you
Good
again,
having
too.
you. All right. Thanks for joining us. You're watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.